Every once in a while, a pitcher enters the league with something special, something that sets them apart from the rest. A pitch that's not just good, it's unstoppable. For some, it's their pinpoint command. For others, it's pure power, just blowing hitters away. But who had the nastiest pitches the game has ever seen? The ones that left batters frozen, swinging at air, or just plain embarrassed. Today, we're diving into the best of the best. So let's find out who had the most unhittable stuff in baseball history. Number 10, Felix Hernandez's changeup. At number 10, we've got Felix Hernandez. King Felix was the definition of an all-around pitcher, a blazing fastball, nasty curveball, and a mentality that made him a nightmare for hitters. But while all those weapons were part of what made him great, what really earned him a spot on this list was his insane changeup. What made it so deadly? He threw it with the same arm speed as his mid-90s fastball. Batters couldn't pick up the difference until it was too late. By the time they realized it wasn't a fastball, they were already swinging at air. His changeup sat in the 86 to 89 mile per hour range, but it wasn't just the speed that made it lethal. It had this nasty drop and fade, especially against lefties. The ball would literally fall off the table at the last moment, making it almost impossible to make solid contact. 9. Greg Maddox's two-seamer. Greg Maddox wasn't focused on throwing hitters off with flashy, deceptive stuff. His approach was much more subtle and strategic, relying on his ability to read the game and react in the moment. It wasn't about overpowering hitters. It was about precision, mental games, and making the ball move in ways hitters just couldn't catch up to. His signature pitch was the two-seam fastball, or sinker, which became the cornerstone of his dominance. That pitch helped him rack up 355 career wins, 4 Cy Young Awards, and 8 All-Star selections. If that doesn't define success, what does? What made Maddox's sinker so special wasn't just its movement. It was how he could manipulate it to get weak contact, especially against right-handed hitters. He was the king of weak hits. Proof of this is an interesting stat that Maddox holds for the most putouts by any pitcher at 546. This shows just how often the hitter would hit dinkers right back at him. Add in his changeup and pinpoint control, and he had the perfect formula for keeping hitters off balance. Maddox could place the ball exactly where he wanted, whenever he wanted, and that consistency is what made him one of the greatest pitchers of all time. 8. Trevor Hoffman's changeup. Trevor Hoffman wasn't a towering figure, and he didn't have a blazing fastball, but what he did have was a changeup that completely baffled hitters for over 2 decades. Hoffman perfected his changeup to be a masterclass in deception and movement. It came in about 15 miles per hour slower than his fastball, but looked exactly the same coming out of his hand. Hitters expecting a fastball would swing way too early, making themselves look foolish as the pitch dove out of the zone. With that one pitch, Hoffman became the first closer to hit 600 saves, securing his spot as one of the greatest in baseball history. 7. Randy Johnson's slider. Randy Johnson was often called the freak of nature, and it's easy to see why. At 6'10" and left-handed, he could effortlessly throw 100 miles per hour. But what truly set him apart as one of the greatest pitchers of all time was his slider. It came in looking like a fastball at 90+ miles per hour, only to break 2 feet away from the plate at the last second. That slider was a Hall of Fame caliber pitch, helping him rack up 303 wins and 4,875 strikeouts. Combine that nasty slider with insane velocity, unreal horizontal movement, and the fact that he threw from the same arm slot as his fastball, and you had a nightmare for hitters. For right-handed hitters, it started out looking like a fastball aimed at their hip, only to break over the plate at the last second. Lefties had no better luck. It'd start at their shoulder and end up either out of the zone or brushing their back foot. And then, of course, there was the intimidation factor. His towering height made him an even more imposing presence on the mound, adding another layer of fear to his already lethal arsenal. 6. Eric Gagne's changeup. Most pitchers threw a standard circle changeup that fades away, but Eric Gagne took a different approach with his split-finger changeup. It's gripped like a splitter, but with just a bit less pressure on the fingers. This subtle tweak allowed him to drop the velocity while still keeping the pitch deceptive. What made Gagne's changeup so deadly? For one, the huge speed difference. His changeup typically sat in the 83 to 86 mile/hour range, while his fastball was in the upper 90s. That 12 to 15 mile/hour gap left hitters completely off balance. But it wasn't just the speed difference that made him so tough, it was his arm action. Gagne threw his changeup with the exact same arm speed as his fastball, so hitters couldn't tell the two apart. They were left guessing every time, and when they guessed wrong, it usually resulted in weak contact or a swing and miss. When he was dealing at his best, Gagne struck out 137 hitters in 82 innings and 84 consecutive saves, which was a record at the time. He also became the first pitcher to record over 50 saves in multiple seasons. 5. Tim Wakefield's knuckleball. 200 career with the knuckleball? The knuckleball is one of those pitches that can throw a hitter mind into a frenzy. Just picture the chaos when Tim Wakefield unleashed it. While fastballs and curveballs are relatively straightforward, a knuckleball is anything but. It doesn't spin at all. That's what makes it so tough to handle. How do you throw a baseball without it spinning? The knuckleball flutters toward the plate, kind of like a butterfly caught in a windstorm, randomly changing directions as it goes. Hitters couldn't time it. Catchers couldn't catch it. Even Wakefield himself didn't always know where it was going. When Wakefield's knuckleball was on, it was one of the most maddening pitches in the game, especially for hitters and catchers. But it helped him carve out a 19-season career and rack up over 200 wins. So, despite all the frustration it caused, Wakefield made it work. And in his case, those challenges were part of the beauty of the pitch. 4. Clayton Kershaw's curveball. Speaking of pitches, Clayton Kershaw is a guy you have to talk about. According to Baseball Savant, his curveball has been so dominant since 2015 that it's earned the nickname Public Enemy #1. The pitch starts above the hitter's letters, looking like a high fastball, then just drops off the table, diving toward the dirt. With its sharp 12-6 movement, Kershaw's curveball is nearly unhittable when he's on his game. The stats back it up, too. Batters have hit well below 200 against it throughout his career. Even some of the best hitters of his era have admitted they couldn't touch it. And when Kershaw won the 2014 MVP with a 1.77 ERA, it was clear his curveball played a huge role in that success. Number 3. Nolan Ryan's fastball. Nolan Ryan, the right-handed pitcher who made a name for himself in Major League Baseball, was known for his fastball that would clock in at 100 miles per hour, which for that era was pretty rare. But Ryan's fastball wasn't just fast, it was groundbreaking. He was still throwing 100-plus miles per hour well into his 40s, and for 27 seasons, his heater terrified hitters. What made it so special wasn't just the velocity. It had insane late lift, making it look like it was rising as it got to the plate. That made it nearly impossible to make solid contact. Even when hitters knew it was coming, they could sit on his fastball and still miss it by a mile. That's how Ryan piled up 5,714 strikeouts, the most in Major League Baseball history. And when he really wanted to mess with batters, he'd mix in a nasty curveball and left them looking foolish. 2. Tim Lincecum's changeup. Tim Lincecum's changeup was never on the same level of his fastball and curve, and he didn't even learn it until a year before he was drafted. But does that mean it's his best pitch, though? Well, yes and no. Yes, because the changeup has undoubtedly been Lincecum's most effective pitch and probably the best often thrown pitch in baseball. However, it could be that hitters are so bent on looking for his fastball or curve that the changeup became so effective. Lincecum's changeup looked identical to his fastball, except it arrived 10 miles per hour slower, and what made it truly unfair was the late drop. Hitters would gear up for a 95-mile-per-hour fastball and instead get an 85-mile-per-hour changeup that fell off the table. By the time they realized it, it's too late. Lincecum during the regular season had a 51% whiff rate and an incredible 61% during the postseason against his changeup. At his peak, Lincecum's changeup was borderline unhittable, leading him to back-to-back Cy Young awards and a no-hitter against the Padres. While injuries have ultimately shortened his career, his changeup remains one of the most dominant pitches in modern baseball history. 1. Mariano Rivera's cutter. For any player that has ever faced Mariano Rivera in the late innings knows what's coming next. It's not hard to predict. The problem wasn't figuring out that his cutter was on its way. The challenge was trying to hit it. Rivera himself called it an intervention from God because, according to him, no one taught him how to throw it. The story goes like this. Back in 1997, Rivera was excited to take over as the Yankees' closer. He wasn't built to be a starter, but his fastball was solid. One day before a game at Tiger Stadium, he was warming up, getting ready to throw his usual four-seam fastball with his normal grip and motion. But just before the ball reached the plate, something strange happened. It started to move. That was it. The ball didn't fly straight again. From then on, that cutter became his signature pitch. With it, Rivera dominated for nearly 2 decades, finishing his career as the all-time saves leader with 652. He was even better when the pressure was on in the postseason, posting an insane 0.70 ERA over 141 innings. That cutter wasn't just effective, it was one of the greatest pitches ever thrown. And that's it. 10 legendary pitches that left hitters from every team in shock time and time again. No matter how predictable they may be, they seem unhittable.